Good morning, everybody, and welcome and thank you for your interest in the Duhaime Homestead. I am Duhaime, and I live in northern Minnesota with my one girl, Stormy, who is a 9-year-old Rottweiler Lab mix. And for several years, I have wanted and tried to become a fully self-sufficient homesteader. But my dreams kept getting knocked to the back burner or just shot down completely, knocked to the wayside. But this year, 2021, is going to be my year for starting my dream and making this come true. But before I explain, I want to give a little background on me, who I am, and how I got to be where I am today. I am an only child after my parents had 7 miscarriages, and I was born 3 weeks before their 20th wedding anniversary. My dad was 46 years old when I was born. I am now 44. No kids. And my mom was 39. Everybody, when I was growing up, thought my parents were actually my grandparents because of their ages, and rather than looking like typical parents, they look like my grandparents. And as I said, you may wonder why I'm telling you all this. It's because this is why I am who I am and how I got to where I am today. I was raised with old-fashioned values. My parents grew up in the 50s, and that's how I was raised, with the old-fashioned stuff. When my parents talked to me and discussed about their childhoods growing up, my mom lived more in the city. My dad lived on the Indian reservation and grew up in a basic tar paper shack with no electricity, no running water. Well, my mom had no water either, but they did have electricity. I was totally and completely enthralled with how they grew up, and I always found it to be very exciting and something I wanted to try. And so that kind of got me started on my wanting to do homesteading. But from early elementary school right through high school, I was severely abused mentally and physically by the other kids in the school, to the point I went into shutdown. My self-esteem went to minus 100, if that's even possible. I had only a very small handful of friends. I became a absolute loner, and as I grew up, I learned to love solitude, being alone. Nature and animals were my escape from everything. You could always find me climbing in the trees, walking through creek beds. I mean, anything nature is where you would find me. And I never wanted to be in the house. It didn't matter what the weather was. Rain, sun, sleet, it didn't matter. And I was always the kid who would come home with any animal or critter that I found. And if it would fit, I'd stuff it in my pocket. Mom, look what followed me home. Can we keep it? Every time she would tell me, you get that thing out of my house right now. It's got to go out. Especially when I brought a jar of grasshoppers into the house. We had a cat at the time. And we left. I told my mom I would dump the grasshoppers when we got home. Well, while we were gone, the cat dumped the grasshoppers. And we literally had a house full of grasshoppers. So that's when my mom was really adamant nothing was coming in the house. She loved animals, but no critters. Excuse me. Growing up and always, I was extremely close to both of my parents, but my mom was a complete and total homebody. She never wanted to leave the house. So my dad and I were out fishing. We'd go hiking in the woods. We'd take drives. Back roads. I mean, that I was in my glory when I was doing that kind of stuff. Um, and I was born and raised in the city until I was 18 years old. At 18, I left home and moved up north, northern Minnesota, and I still live here to this day. When I go to the city, it's just like, get me out of here. I want to go home. I need to be where there's very few people and it's quiet, peaceful, and nature. Within 3 months of my moving up here, my parents followed me. And they sold our house in the city and moved up. And my dad found my current home and land for me. I have 1 acre. And as we were starting to fix it up, I got it from people who had it foreclosed on them. So that's how I got my current house. And I tried to help with painting, the remodel. I wanted to help with everything, to learn. And my dad kept, no, you're going to get hurt. Nope, you can't do that. Nope, don't do it. I'll do it. And the only thing I was able to do was the cleaning product. And I would get very frustrated because I wanted to learn how to do things on my own, because I had always had my dad doing everything for me. And now I'm going to fast forward to 2011. On December 29th, 2011, my dad passed away very suddenly and unexpectedly at 79 years old. And I thought I was very independent, but I learned very, very fast that I was so dependent on my dad. I had already had plans to start a homestead here, and my dad was going to be helping me. But now that was gone. And my mom was absolutely lost without my dad. She married my dad when she was 18 years old, moved from her parents' house into my dad's house. So she had never lived on her own. And my dad took care of the bills, he took care of the money, he took care of everything. She only did whatever she wanted to do. So now that he was gone, I had to step in and take that spot of paying her bills and doing everything. And when I realized when I wasn't there, my mom's health would go downhill. She had depression. She refused to go in and get help for it. And if I had to be there, I was there every day with her. And when I was there with her, she was fine. But if I went to work or out of town for a day, her health and everything would just go downhill. So I continuously quit my job to spend more time with her. And then when she was better, I'd go back to work and we'd start the process all over again. Well, then I realized there was something going on with my mom. She was losing weight very fast. And I finally got her into the doctor. I had to trick her to go to the doctor. Come to find out, my mom weighed 83 pounds. I knew she was thin, but I had no idea how thin. And she was diagnosed with diabetes. So I got her on track with eating and her meds, because I say eating because I found out when I wasn't with her, she wouldn't eat. She didn't want to cook for just one person. She would eat candy and drink her pop, and that was about all my mom would eat. So now I started eating with her, cooking for her, and I basically was just there all the time. I would come home and sleep and go up first thing in the morning and be there all day. Well, then about a year later came the diagnosis that my mom had dementia. And that threw me for the worst loop I had ever had. But I swore to myself I was going to take care of her and do the best that I could do. And she had fallen, and she didn't break anything at that time, but they told me she either had to go into a care center or she needed a full-time live-in caregiver. That was a no-brainer for me. I quit my job again and I moved in with my mom. And during that was about 7 years ago. And during that time, my house sat vacant basically for 7 years. Um, I paid the heat and the electricity so my pipes wouldn't freeze in the winter, and that was pretty much it. Um, my mom passed away March 31st of 2019, and I had already been dealing with a lot of anxiety and panic attack, but after I lost my mom, my anxiety, panic attacks just went completely out of control. Um, I was terrified to be alone. I didn't know how to function by myself. Being I had no siblings, no nieces, no nephews, no kids, no parents, no grandparents. I mean, I had nobody left. And it threw me into a horrible, horrible depression. I have friends, but when you lose your last parent, especially if you don't have siblings, I personally felt like I was an orphan. I nobody. Um, I had my dog Stormy, and it was just her and I. And I finally started to come out of my depression and get back to living. But then I moved back home, I think in June of 2019. And I was trying to get my life kind of in order. And I went back to work in October of 2019, which was probably the best thing I have ever done for myself because it forced me to be around people. And I realized I did like being around people. But I put every single bit of my effort into working and being strong as a person. And I didn't focus on the house. I didn't focus on anything but working and getting myself healed, I guess you could say. And then, excuse me, I was just starting to get back on track with wanting to get my homestead started. And then in August of 2020, everything fell apart again. I allowed a guy to stay here who I thought was a good friend of mine, but he completely destroyed my home. He ripped out my walls, my insulation. He destroyed my yard. When I was at work, he was dumpster diving with a buddy of his and hauling all kinds of junk into my house. It was just a horrible, horrible mess. You couldn't walk in my house. And it got to the point where I was terrified of him. He had told me he could burn my house down and make it look like an electrical accident. He had been wielding a butcher knife, threatening to kill people. He scared me beyond belief. And it took me almost 3 months from the day he started staying here to get him out. And now I finally have him out of my house. And I'm getting back on track now. But it took law enforcement and a domestic violence place to get him out of my home. And it's taken me almost 4 months to clean his stuff out of here and just have my house again. I have one room left to go to clean out all his stuff. But and the yard looks like a junkyard, but I'm going to tackle that once the snow melts. Yeah, we still have snow. We might have snow until May. But this is going to bring me to the ending of this video. But this is how I got to be who I am today. And Stormy and I are now ready 100% to start our homestead. And I'm going to share the good, the bad, and the ugly parts of our journey. because regardless of if I do things right or wrong, I'm going to learn from my mistakes. And I've made a ton of mistakes in the past already that I've learned from. But I'm hoping you guys have a better understanding of where I'm coming from with this and how I got to getting into homesteading and why it's taken me so long to get this ball rolling. But don't forget to hit subscribe and the like button so you can follow along with Storm and I. And in my next video, which will be in maybe a week or so, I'm going to walk you guys through the plans for our homestead in 2021. And again, I thank you for watching. Have a great day.